starting at zero was really the vision of the Saul Zaentz Charitable Foundation, who's the funder for the project. And so Elliot is a director. Elliot Steinberg here is a director of the Saul Zaentz Charitable Foundation. And so we've worked really very closely hand in hand from the beginning to, make this film happen. But, the vision really came from them. And my role has been as director and co-producer, bringing my team, my creative team, Firestarter Interactive, to shoot and interview and edit and all the things that go into making a creative production take place.
Saul Zaentz was a filmmaker himself.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the name.
Okay, good.
I often do this with documentaries, which is with a documentary like Starting at Zero, that is the subject of the documentary is so important and so emotionally, it's such a positive story and such a thing that I know the whole audience would have asked you a series of questions about all these programs going on to lift children, but I would force this in the theater. Let's talk about the filmmaking for a second, because the job you did as director, this documentary is wonderfully put together. It tells the story and it not only makes what's happening and why it's needed perfectly clear to the audience, but the pacing is great. Everything about it is so great that you take something that could have felt like a lecture and you make it imminently viewable and entertaining and heartwarming. So bravo for your work as director. And since Elliot is involved with the Saul Zaentz charity, how did they get Willa on board with this project? Since it actually came to you, you didn't come to them and say, "I want to do this film," right? They came to you.
No, we came to her. So Saul Zaentz, who died in 2014, was a filmmaker, of course, but he also had a couple of really key issues that really surrounded his life in terms of humanity and social issues. So that was social justice and minority poverty. And we felt in many discussions that the best way to impact poverty in America, especially, is through education. And given the dysfunction of the K-12 system, the best way really to do that is with early childhood education. And that if you can, and in addition to that, the 21st century skills that children and adults, frankly, are going to need are primarily digitally based. And what they come down to are things like empathy. Empathy is probably the most important. Connectedness, the ability to relate to each other, put yourself in somebody else's shoes, to work together, to be willing to resolve differences, to sort of love thy enemy, if that's where we're going, which is certainly for me a political issue that really needs to be addressed. And it's why we're so dysfunctional. And as a friend of mine said, it's not about division, it's about vision. And how do you envision what you want this world to look like? That's not what happens here, but it's what happened with Saul Zaentz. And the reason that he was so successful as a filmmaker, 3 Best Academy Award pictures and 27 Academy Awards in total, plus honors all over the world, was really because he learned to work with others and to work with others collaboratively, to let them do their work, to be supportive. And so that's not something a lot of people do. It's certainly not something a lot of filmmakers do. So he he was one of the, and anyone who had worked with him on a film would come back to do it again in a second. So he really built a group of directors and editors and people who really loved him. I think that's the best way to put it. And so when we started working on early childhood education, we hadn't really focused on documentary filmmaking as a way to really tell that story. And the field itself, early childhood education, is so fragmented and so in many ways disabled. And people don't communicate. Of course, this is true in everything, right? People don't communicate with each other. They don't, they, you know, they don't spread and work together with what they're learning and what they're doing to really create a unified program. Well, that was not our view, and it's certainly not Saul's view. So we thought what you had to do was really deal with all the silos in early education, of which there are thousands, and you have to put together a cohesive program that people can begin to understand what it is that they need to do and what it is that you can empower them to do. Saul always said, that you need to live an imagined life. And so we try to encourage all of these organizations and individuals in early childhood education to live an imagined life. And so when we met Willa, she was perfect. Willa is a very, very creative, very knowledgeable, not just filmmaker, but humanitarian. And we felt that she could really, that she's so creative and artistic, that she could really tell this story. And I was giving a lecture at Harvard about early learning, and a woman came up to me and said, "Oh, I really enjoyed your talk. It was very inspirational. I am the director of the early childhood education program, or secretary of the early childhood education program in Alabama. And we'd like to invite you to come to Alabama, whenever it was, next 2 months from then, where the governor is having this program on early learning, and we'd love to have you speak." So I said, well, let me look at that and I'll get back to you. And of course, I'm a child of the 60s for sure, 50s, more even earlier than that. But that's where I went to law school. That's where I really, at Berkeley, let alone. So I'd never been to Alabama, and my impressions were not necessarily positive. And because I remember what happened in the civil rights movement. Anyway, so I looked up Alabama, and it turns Alabama's the fourth poorest state in the country. It is the #1 high quality early child education program in America. #1. And it has been that way for years. Nobody knows about it. They just don't, who would think that? I wouldn't. And most people didn't. So I said, I called her back and I said, I'm coming. I want to see your program, and I gave her some criteria. I want to meet some teachers and professionals. So I went down there and I was blown away. I went all over, including Selma, and saw the schools and students and met with the teachers and so on. And I met with their administrators and all that stuff. So I was there for 3 days in Montgomery. And when I finished, I said, this is remarkable what you're doing, just remarkable. But there's no way to write it. And there's certainly no way to really talk about it. No one's going to pay attention anyway. So the way to really deal with it, let's make a documentary. let's make a documentary about Alabama and your program. And they readily agreed to that, of course. But and then I went to Willa. So then as we got into it, we realized, as we started to do our research and talk, we realized that Alabama's background in early learning really evolved out of Georgia, North Carolina, who, by the way, are leaders in, or were in early childhood education. And so we soon discovered that really it isn't a story just about Alabama, although that's the main focus of our film, as you know. It's really about the South. And we really need to tell that story, because why is it that these Southern states are doing such a fabulous job? Many of them have universal early child care. Many of them have programs that other states and other communities could model. And I couldn't figure out why. What was that? Well, it's pretty simple in part, and that is that they really care about children. They really care about family. They have these family values. They care about children and how they're doing and so on. And so it's that love of family, that love of childhood that resonates in many ways throughout the South. Now, needless to say, there have been transitions, and there have been more than one civil war and one revolution. But by and large, they've been peaceful revolutions, and they have led to significant change. So Alabama started this program in 2000. They tried all kinds of ways to get it funded through lotteries and so on, and the voters just turned it down. So they started with a small grant for 8 classrooms, and that's grown in these 20 years to totally successful program, and it's primarily because of how they approached it. They approached it, again, my favorite word, with connectivity, with empathy. They brought in the business community, they brought in the legislature, they brought in the philanthropic community, and they all worked together, and they set standards. You had to have as you know, you had to have a bachelor's degree, so on and so forth. Anyway, so that's the story. We thought it was going to be, 30 days of work. 2.5 years later, we finished with all of our travels across the South and across the southern states and up into, and in many ways, all the red states, in Oklahoma, in Montana, which you saw. And so in this film, we have 5 governors, because we decided in the midst of this whole thing that the way that you spread the word is that you have to go to the job creators. You have to go to people who actually can really make decisions to fund and help fund and create early childhood education. And so our focus is on the states. We do some work with federal programs, and we're delighted that federal programs keep growing, not enough, and that they have block grants that they give to communities. But from a grassroots standpoint, it has to be the states. And since the governors have received a lot of support recently because of their position on COVID-19 and how they've come forward, they've become very popular. And so we feel that if we can spread the word among states and get governors and other organizations to join us, and that's what we've been working on. So we have a lot of other states that have come on board with what we're doing, and other foundations, of course. We have a big following. And we're very excited about where we are. We feel, and we don't think of it as ourselves, we think of it as our being part of a community of advocates for early childhood education. And we
And
think
you see this film. You mentioned how you were familiar
yeah,
with Willa and
you
Broader, and
see the
you
film. In
see this
fact,
film as a tool to show to the public, or is this film a tool to show
to everybody.
to
No,
governments?
everybody. As we want as wide an audience as we can get, as wide possible an audience. And we actually made another film called Tomorrow's Hope, which is about the South Side of Chicago. It's 43 minutes long. It's a documentary. It's really a terrific, powerful documentary about early education on the South Side of Chicago and how that saved families. But so then we made both of these at the same time for different reasons. So we're really
I didn't direct both though.
Right.
No,
So
Willa did
this one's
we
Willa.
had another director.
Here,
Right.
let me shift to Willa.
Yeah, so
we
I'm
have time.
finished. So you've got the story, and we believe that digital media is the way, of course, the wave of the future, and that COVID-19 has only increased the necessity to do what we're doing and to really create very large audiences for our work. So, enough. I apologize for the long sort of diatribe.
It's understandable. It's a big topic. But Willa, when you came in, we've got a couple minutes. Please share what it was like for you to come in on this, and it sounds like this has been a year or more of your life. It sounds like.
Yeah, several years. So, when I got the call from Elliot, we interviewed him for another project. So, we had that relationship, and he said, "How about the documentary about the program in Alabama?" And I'm generally up for an adventure, so I said, "That sounds interesting. Sure, let's go to Alabama. Let's tell this story." And as he said, it had just we realized once we were on the ground doing interviews that the story was really so much bigger than that and had roots in all these other places. So we really, it was just this very organic process of just, neither of us come from the field of early learning. So I think that gave us this kind of fresh perspective and just outsiders. We didn't feel like, oh, we're not supposed to talk to this person or this part of the field or this part of the field, whereas it is a rather fragmented field. And so, teachers and parents and academia and government and policy, but we just, kind of went in with beginner's eyes, as Elliot likes to say, and just, began asking questions and kind of following the thread of where interviews and different introductions took us. And then somehow it all fit together in the end, and we've continued to evolve it.
Yeah, you weren't able to create a filmmaking plan. You really had to counterpunch, it sounds like, the whole way through, because you were getting whatever they were giving you. It's not like you had researched the subject for 5 years and decided, okay, this is exactly how I'll tell this.
Right. And, we really were learning as we went, and have certainly learned a lot more about the fields of early education, through the process, but definitely, are always still learning. And this is also, my first film project of this length. So it, was definitely, just a new experience and opportunity for me, but one that definitely, will inform all my work going forward.
Yeah, and you said you're still doing some polishing on it.
A little bit. We just have had to make some adjustments in kind of in light of COVID. Just wanting to make sure that it's clear that the film was produced prior to COVID, and just to be really sensitive about just the current political climate and kind of everything in our country right now, and so to be sensitive with how we release and communicate with our audience.
Yeah, well, I mean, from the charity to these programs to the film, it's all very promising. I mean, all the evidence is in there of what a difference this makes in lives, and that a few generations later, there'll actually really be some true change.
Yeah. We just, I think we both just all of us have really, and the people who we interviewed to have just believed in this common vision and the just the power of sharing this positive aspirational vision. And if you help lay that out for people and kind of show where there are these areas of shared priority and commonality, then that can really help move the needle forward. And as Elliot said, really a focus on leadership and decision makers, people in the positions of leadership who really actually do have the power to. There are only 50 states, and if each governor and each policymaker can learn from each other, there really is the potential to expand it, on a national scale and make a difference. So,
and hopefully, if a governor watches this documentary, their response will be, "Well, if I don't do this, I'm going to look like a jerk."
Right. Well, I'm not going to be, successful I'm not my state isn't going to be.
But who would say no? Who would watch this documentary and go, "Well, that's not for my people."
Right. Which is this kind of, economic.
Absolutely. That's great. That's absolutely right. That's what it comes down to.
Are you in or are you out? Do you want to be part of this? Do you want a successful future? So that's how we've been approaching.
Yeah, and long term. I'm so sorry. We're actually, I do have to end this Q&A, but thank you so much for submitting the film. And it was an honor to watch it, and it's an honor to have it be an official selection. And I follow you on social media now. So I look forward to seeing where it goes from here. We live in a cool world where I'll know, and hopefully this film ends up on CNN or PBS or somewhere and really, really gets the number of eyeballs it deserves.
Well, I must say, we're delighted that you liked it. I mean, you're one of the first people, a third party in the film business, who has really seen our work. And so, you never know, because your friends are always supportive, right? And they don't want to criticize you, and they don't know what they know and what you know. So to have somebody actually who's watched the film from the perspective of a filmmaker really is so gratifying for us. And we love that you love it. So we can't thank you enough.
Well, it's honestly, it warms my heart to know that I will tell everyone I'll make sure the jury watches this one to know that
we'll keep you in the loop with the evolutions. We're planning, we're planning the virtual premiere, and it should be, so we'll keep you in the loop with that, and hopefully you can be part of that experience.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. It was wonderful to meet you both.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing this great work.
I apologize for monopolizing the conversation, but I think that for people new to this work, it's important to understand where one has to come from.
Well, and I think to be the director of a charitable organization of this significance, you have to have passion. So I think it's all a good thing.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Well, best of luck with the rest of the festival. We look forward to tuning in, and thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, and watch your fellow. There's another wonderful documentary about a farm that helps veterans with PTSD.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, the documentary is a wonderful category where sometimes they're downers, but very often they're not. So
yeah, well, we like the ones that are positive, so we'll definitely.
All right. Well, thank you for the film. It's wonderful work, and thank you both for taking the time to do this.
For showing it. I mean, we really appreciate it a lot. So.
All right. Well,
I hope we meet again, and I really look forward to that.
Same here.
All right. Take care, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Right. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Bye.